Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another audiobook series here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia, otherwise known as the Wandering Quill and Wandering Scribe, and today we are continuing with the Gathering story, beginning with chapter 18. Now, where we last left off, all the heroes have assembled, and now they're about to learn, especially for the newcomers, why they were summoned, and who exactly is Archibald Hamilton. Hamilton, I should say. So, without further ado, let's begin. Chapter 18. According to the elders, Lord Kairos was once Archibald Hamilton, a revered American professor of ancient civilizations, languages, and antiquities. He traveled worldwide, looking for ancient artifacts and historical pieces. A man in his prime, who had short brown hair and blue eyes, and had a loving wife, a fellow academic, Margaret Hamilton. He was acute, professional, intelligent, and unable to resist a challenge. One day he joined an archaeological excavation team to examine the ruins of a newly discovered Athenian temple in southern Greece. As the team uncovered bizarre remains on the surface, Hamilton went further into the cave until he discovered a scepter with a crescent moon head. Something about the scepter intrigued the scholar, and under some unknown trance, walked closer to it. As he approached it, he felt a sense of power radiating from the scepter, a force unlike he had ever felt before. Gently grabbing the handle, a wave of energy like an electric pulse engulfed him and caused the temple to shatter. The team above ran in fear just as a beam of energy burst from the temple into the sky like a rocket, leaving a bluish, illuminating glow. When the team went to look for the professor, they couldn't find him, nor a body, or anything of him. It was as if he vanished, just as the temple collapsed. Many thought he was dead, but that was further from the truth. Hamilton was alive, and transported to another world. Upon his arrival, the American professor woke up in an unknown field. He still had his clothes on and the scepter with him. Upon inspection, he noticed strange tattoos embedded in his skin. They resembled half-moons. He was then greeted by the Kronite people, who took him in. He was surprised to discover that the people spoke ancient Greek. Upon asking how they learned the ancient language from Earth, they explained that a millennia ago, their ancestors, once a hunter-gatherer-based society, used their magic to peel the layers of time to uncover knowledge elsewhere. In pursuit of knowledge, they stumbled upon ancient Greece during the Mycenaean Age, in the last phase of the Bronze Era. Realizing how easy it was for them to pick up the language, they adopted it as their official dialect. This included their alphabet, writing system, and early forms of government. After learning this, Archibald was fascinated by this race of beings. After adjusting to this new land for weeks, the people shared their magical secrets with the human. They would later come to regret this decision. They taught him how to harness magic from the scepter, and unlike him, the Kronite could harness magic from their hands. They trained their American friend to use this power for good. The professor was fascinated at what he could do with his newfound skills, and the Kronite were surprised of how much his prowess grew in a short period. The professor later used his powers to advance agriculture, government, language, and social stability. He was the one who helped the Kronite name their folk heroes and villains using real and mythological Greek characters from antiquity. Growing ever more curious, he asked his teachers where this power source came from. They told him all their strength came from a sacred stone called the Moonstone. The stone was respected amongst the people, and it resided in the heart of a mountain far from them. Hamilton asked them why they didn't use all of the stone's power. They explained to him that the stone contained unstable magic, and they could only use a fraction of it amongst the clans. If anyone were to use all of its power, the Moonstone would corrupt the user. Hamilton protested that if they could find the stone, he could use the scepter and further advance the civilization. His teachers dismissed the idea and forbade him from having thoughts like those ever again. It was here that the people would see Hamilton's true nature. After being introduced to this power, Hamilton secretly journeyed to the mountains, looking for this stone. His journey took him to the top, where he found 7 stone statues resembling members of the Greek pantheon. Looking at the statues, he saw one of them holding the stone in its palms. Wrapping his hands around it, he tried to pull the stone out. With every tug and pull, he felt the energy from the stone gust through him, and soon the rock gave way, and Hamilton fell to the ground. The stone's removal shook the very mountain to its core, and the valleys below. As he got back up, he noticed the stone statue began to crack. Soon dark energy began to shine through, and with a loud boom, the stone statues shattered. As dust settled, Hamilton was surrounded by 7 figures: Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Athena, Ares, Hermes, and Hephaestus. Long ago, they were the 7 warlords of this world, but they were turned to stone a millennium before Hamilton arrived. Now free, they planned to exact their vengeance on the people. But first, they had to contend with their savior. As one approached him, the American pulled out the scepter to defend himself. To his surprise, the warlord knelt and swore fealty and undying service to him. The other 6 followed suit. Then one presented Hamilton with a bronze helmet. He cautiously took the offering and placed it on its head. As soon as he did so, he felt a surge of power flow throughout his body. The scepter and stone glowed brightly than before, and with a loud crackling sound, Hamilton was engulfed in blue fire. The fire didn't kill him, but transformed his body while twisting his mind. The stone's unstable power read his heart, and filled his thoughts with the dream of making a new world here, a perfect utopia, crafted in his own image. Soon the transformation ended, and where once stood Hamilton, now stood someone else. His eyes were silver, and his hair was white. The clothing he once had was now a glimmering set of armor. No longer was he Hamilton, professor from the United States. He was Lord Kairos, leader of the Pantheon, and supreme warlord of this world. When he returned to the village, he enacted his plan to create a new civilization, and in the process enslaved the people he once called friends. Using the power of the stone and the scepter in unison, he began constructing large towns and cities and a castle for him to rule. His pantheon enforced his will on the populace and made examples of those who resisted. Soon, their lush homes and villages turned into work camps, and all around them the land slowly died as the stone took its life force away. Yet some resisted. Among the people, 7 mages of the last 7 clans emerged to fight the warlord and his band. They were the world's most powerful sorcerers and spellcasters. To the Chronai, they were their people's last chance. The 7 helped unite the surviving clans and revolt against the Lord of Time, and his newly constructed castle, named Olympus. Many died on that fateful day, but in the ensuing uprising, the 7 managed to steal the stone, and with their combined magic banished Kairos and his pantheon from these lands. However, they knew he would return and reclaim his stone with a vengeance. Knowing they would need help, the mages constructed a stone ring in the center of the moon forest, carved with ancient symbols of their people. And thus they called upon the warriors from Earth using the stone's power. Thus, the gathering of champions began. "What happened next?" asked Symbol, eagerly awaiting for the end. Then Richard cleared his throat and continued the elder story. Lord Kairos came back much earlier than anticipated. During his banishment, he gathered an army of outcasts and turned them into obedient soldiers and followers. When he returned, he enacted a purge on the 7 clans that defied him. Originally, hundreds of Earthlings were fighting with the people against Kairos, but his warband eradicated them all. He pointed to all the warriors' weapons and armor on the temple walls. These once belonged to the first gathering. Now, they're simply reminders for us. Lord Kairos searched for the stone once his warband eradicated the Earthlings. Thankfully, the mages never kept the stone in one place. They often sent the stone to another clan in hopes of confusing him. Sadly, he exterminated all 6 of the 7 clans, including the 6 mages who banished him. Now the last mage is being held as a prisoner in Castle Olympus. Richard said nothing else and allowed the others to take in all the new information. Tyra then asked Richard a question she and the others had been wondering. If all the Earthlings died when kaiors returned, how did you and your friends arrive here? This time Mori spoke. We were the last group of 7 to be summoned here. As we found out, it takes too much energy to summon hundreds of warriors without destroying the land. Thus, the people decided to only summon 7 Earthlings from across time. Just like those before us, we were summoned to free these people. But after 5 long years of fighting, Richard, Sparrow, and I cannot stop Lord Kairos in his pantheon alone. This is why you 4 were summoned. To help free these people. Tira, Decimus, Aminus, and Symbol looked at the people before them. They then turned their attention to Avalon, who had been silent throughout the discussion. And what is your stake in this crisis? Asked the Roman. The hunter got up and showed them his medallion. This medallion tells me it is my destiny to help you succeed in your quest and bring about peace. Whatever your decision is, know that I will follow you to the ends of the world. It was a lot to take in, and many doubted this was real. Nonetheless, their questions were answered. Now these people needed theirs. All was quiet until Aminus stood up. Back home in Sparta, we were born and raised as warriors, trained to defend our homes from the Persian invaders. When I finished my training, I was put into service and sent with my army to face them. Before we met the enemy, my commander told us that we were fighting to free ourselves from foreign tyranny and preserve the lives of our people. He then looked at everybody around him. I may not know you people or fully understand the stone or who this Lord Kairos is, but I know that no one should live under oppression. I'll fight for you. His statement got the attention of the people who had all but given up hope. The elder smiled along with Richard and his companions. Then Desmond stood up, followed by Symbol, and lastly Tira. Avalon also stood by them. They repeated the exact same phrase, and the people cheered and applauded. Finally, after years of suffering, their champions had come. After the brief celebration, the band of heroes plotted how to defeat Lord Kairos and get the mage out. For hours they debated the best course of action. Some felt a frontal attack would work, while others favored a more stealthy approach. Getting nowhere, they decided to take a break and get some air. As Aminus and the others explored the rest of the village, Richard, Mori, and Sparrow stayed behind and looked at the walls. The trio then looked at a particular part or section of the temple, which housed 4 glass boxes. The trio's past comrades' items were in these boxes, and these 4 were their closest friends. The first box housed an elegantly curved sword, called a samshir, and a turban wrapped around it. It belonged to Kabir al-Salim, a Saracen who served under Saladin during the Crusades. The second box contained a broken jaguar helmet, a wooden club with obsidian shards, and a tattered cotton armor. It belonged to Itzukal, a jaguar warrior during the fall of the Aztec Empire. The third box contained a bronze sickle sword called a kopesh, belonging to Rabia, an Egyptian infantryman serving under Ramesses II. The fourth and final box contained no weapon or clothing at all, just a simple bracelet and medicine bag belonging to a Mongolian girl named Yisu Khatun. She was the daughter of a Mongol chief and was the bravest of them all. Richard touched the glass and reminisced about his friend's loss. Mori placed a hand on his weary friend's shoulder. They will be avenged. We will make sure of that. Once this is all over, we'll give them a proper burial. Richard looked at his friend. Will it be over? We've been here for 5 years. How do you still have hope, Mori? The samurai looked at the 4 glass containers and then back at his friend. Hope keeps these people alive, and has kept us together all these years. I don't know if we'll succeed or not, but all I can do is have hope. The trio then talk about old times as day turns to night. And during the discussion, they remember their old friends. As for the 4 newcomers, they continued exploring the village. Avalon, however, went to discuss with his guardian. The night sky was littered with the stars of distant planets and moon. For the first time in a long time, people felt at peace and spent the night with family and loved ones. Seeing this interaction made Decimus sad. He still missed his family, of course, and wondered what was happening back in Rome. Sitting outside the temple, the Roman grabbed a stick and scratched at the dirt. As he did so, he saw a glimpse of a shadow approaching him. It was Tiora, who had a drink in her hand. She sat next to him and took a sip from her cup. She was surprised at how tart the drink was, much different from anything she had back home. Still, it was better than nothing, and continued drinking. "Do you miss home?" Decimus asked. Tiora wiped her hand over her mouth and looked back at him, unsure if she heard him correctly. "Do you miss home, Viking?" Tiora let out a huff. "Of course I do. All of us do, I imagine. Why do you ask?" The Roman put his stick down and pulled out his eagle necklace. "My wife gave this to me before I left for war. I feel this may be the only thing I have left of my home." Tiora noticed the sadness in her companion's words. "Do you have a family or a loved one, Tiora?" The Viking quickly shook her head no. She had longed for a family, though, but such was not the case. The Roman placed a hand on her shoulder and smiled. "Don't worry. I'm sure you'll find somebody once this is all over." His comforting words brought a smile to her face, and she offered to buy him a drink. He agreed, and they walked back to the bar. As for Amminus, the Spartan walked around in the tall grass outside the village and marveled at the moon. Its luminous glow covered the whole area. Finding a small hill, he sat and thought of ways to save the mage. There has to be a way to stop Kairos, but how? He thought to himself. As the young Spartan deliberated on his ideas, he heard a soft howl of the summer breeze blowing past him. Getting further into his thoughts, he tried to put everything he heard from the elders and Richard together. Concentrating diligently, he finally devised a plan. Getting to his feet, the young lad rushed back into the village. He asked everyone to come into the temple at once. Intrigued, Richard and the six, Avalon and the Chronai, arrived at the temple. Once fully settled, they waited patiently for the news. "I think I know a way to beat Lord Kairos," said Amminus. "What do you mean?" asked the others. "Well, it's more of a two-part plan. The first part is we need another stone." Everyone looked at the Spartan, puzzled by this. "Elders, in your tale you said that the 7 warlords gave Hamilton a helmet. Tell me, did the helmet have a previous owner?" The elders looked at each other until one spoke. "Yes. The helmet belonged to a man known as kaiors. He was obsessed with getting favorable outcomes to benefit himself and his followers. Thus he constructed a magical helmet to predict dangerous and advantageous outcomes. He grew in power, turned his followers into the 7 warlords, and changed his name to Kairos." Everyone gasped in the temple. "Correct. I believe that when this Lord Kairos died, his spirit probably possessed the helmet. And now that spirit controls Hamilton. Yes, the stone read his heart and saw his flaws, but only that happened when he wore the helmet. My belief is that the spirit of Lord Kairos needs the stone to keep his host body alive." The sudden realization shocked everyone in the room. Just then a citizen shouted at Amminus, "How did you figure that out? You haven't been here that long." The Spartan acknowledged the citizen's comment and continued to speaking, giving his reply. "True, neither I nor the others have been here that long, but listening to everything you have said, it got me thinking. When Hamilton got the stone and turned to Kairos, he ruled here for over 100 years. That seems an awful long time for a mortal to rule. Then you told us he desperately hunted for the stone when he was banished. I believe he needs that stone to keep his host body alive. Without the stone, the body would fail, and his spirit could never again take on physical form." As he finished, Richard got up. "And how does this all relate to your plan of getting another stone?" Amos gave a reply. "The answer is simple. We will make another one." Everyone in the temple got up in an uproar. The Chronai explained to the Spartan that the materials needed to make a stone were destroyed. All seemed bleak until Avalon spoke up. "Deep in the forest is a totem that houses a green moonstone. The stone has no magic in it, of course. It's mainly used as decoration. But it's impossible to retrieve it." "Why is that?" inquired Tiora. "The stone belongs to the Wendigo people, and I'll not part with it so easily," said Avalon. "Surely we can beat them. I mean, a couple of days ago you single-handedly saved me from a group." "One small group is not the same as the entire tribe," said Avalon. Not even Kairos dares to anger them. It's a suicide mission. Do we have a choice? We risk getting eaten by cannibals or incinerated by Kairos, and time is running out. Not just for us, but for the mage. Sooner or later, Kairos will kill him and march his forces here. We cannot linger anymore. I say we go to the forest and get that stone. Everyone began chanting in the temple. Even the elders debated this radical idea. With everyone preoccupied, Decimus pulled Amminus aside to speak with him and the others. That's a hell of a plan, Spartan. But what's the second step if we get the stone? Provided we survive. How do we defeat a living god? Kairos wants a stone. We know that. But what does Hamilton want? No one could answer that question except for Decimus. He figured it out and said, home. Amminus explained the rest of his plan to them. Hamilton, like them, was far from home. Based upon what they had heard, he was happy to help the people of this land, but he often spoke of going back home to his wife Margaret. This brought up a question in his mind. Did she miss him? Did she remarry? Is she dead? His plan, once they got the green stone and infused it with magic, was to summon Hamilton's wife and use her to snap him out of Lord Kairos' control. Once he was freed, they would deal with the 7 warlords and return home. Everyone agreed to the young Spartan's plan. It was risky, bold, but as he said, time was running out. Just then he heard the elders call out for them. They broke their huddle and approached the wise Chronai. They explained to the Earthlings that they disagreed with this plan, but realized they don't have an alternative. The Chronai elders blessed the humans and told them they must retrieve the stone at all costs. Satisfied, Amminus put his helmet back on and grabbed his gear. Decimus shook his head and did the same. Tira and Simple followed behind. Avalon shrugged and followed along, with Richard, Sparrow, and Maury bringing up the rear. Maury told the villagers that they would be back as soon as possible. Sparrow sent Richard's falcon into the sky to be their eyes. As the 8 warriors left the temple, all were greeted by the villagers, who bowed before them. The village men and women kneeled in respect and honor to their saviors. It had been so many years since this happened. Walking towards the gate leading to the Badlands and further along the forest, Amina stopped. In confusion, the rest of the group did the same. Richard, does this place have any farm animals by chance? Say a horse? Horses, no. We have creatures called basilisks. They're massive creatures with large eagle-like heads on powerful reptilian bodies. They run on all fours, from what I'm told. Why do you ask? Amminus gave a sly smile. Well, why the hell are we walking then? Making a quick detour to the stables, the heroes rode out under the midnight sky. As they charged into the Badlands, Sparrow, Symbol, and Tira let out war cries into the night sky that echoed throughout the plains. Amminus saw the faint outline of the valley's end as they headed further into the Badlands. They knew they were close to the forest, where their journey had began. For all of them. Chapter 19. Upon reaching the valley's edge, their mounts grew tired and needed rest. Dismounting, the heroes slowly made their way to the forest. Some had their hands already on their sword hilts. None wanted to go back to the woods, especially Symbol, of course. Her arm now bore a scar from her first encounter with the Wendigos. Despite how everybody felt, though, they had to get the stone from the cannibals. With a heavy sigh, Amminus began to walk back into the forest. When he realized, he had no idea where the cannibals dwelled. Avalon, where exactly do the Wendigos live here? The hunter pointed his finger straight into the very center of the woods. The Spartan shook his head. Of course, where else would a cannibal tribe live? He thought to himself. As he was about to enter, Avalon stopped him. You'll have to leave your armor and shields behind. The Spartan looked at him in bewilderment. They lived deep under the ground, beneath a dead tree with wild roots surrounding the entrance. If we want to succeed this, we cannot have items that will alert them. The Spartan huffed, but he knew he was right. He removed all of his bronze armor, helmet and shield. Decimus, Tira, and Symbol, Maury, and Richard did the same as well. Sparrow knew a safe way to the cannibal's lair, and everyone followed him. Now fully ready, the Mohawk led his companions into the woods towards the dark and secluded region. Treading further into the woodlands, the surrounding scenery grew quieter and colder, as if all life had been snuffed out of existence. Everyone stayed closer together, fearing that the Wendigos were already watching them. Further along, they ventured deeper into the heart of the woods with every step. They finally found the home of the Wendigos, and true to Avalon's word, it was under a dead tree. The descriptions were not wrong either. Wild tree roots tipped with poisonous barbs surrounded the entrance underneath the tree, thus preventing any unwanted guests from entering. Luckily, Sparrow knew of a secret door to the Wendigos. A massive stone behind a dead tree blocked it. "How do you know about this place?" whispered Thimble. "When we were summoned, Sparrow teleported to the center of the forest. That is how he was captured by them," replied Richard. "He was held there for almost 3 weeks, enduring terrible torments at the hands of the cannibals. Since then, he has a deep hatred towards them. He cannot escape at night while his jailers were He escaped at night while his jailers went out hunting for new meat. This passage is how he escaped." The Mohawk warrior moved toward the mighty stone, pushing it off the entrance. The rugged rock slowly gave way, and the passage revealed itself inch by inch. "I don't like this place. It gives me the creeps." Cheer rubbed her hands across her arms. She had never been more afraid of a forest than this one. No one said a word. Even the slightest noise could give away their position. Desmond surveyed their surroundings, but a light mist covered the area, thus only allowing 3 feet of visibility. Finally, Sparrow moved the stone off the center. He quietly signaled for the others that the opening was clear. They quickly went to the cold, dark abyss of the secret passage, and as they prepared to go further into the passageway, Sparrow pulled out a flint from his pouch. Grabbing a dead branch, he tore off some clothing, wrapped it around the top of the wood, and made a makeshift torch. He gestured to everyone to do the same. "Be careful where you step. These passages are littered with the bones of the eaten. All we need is one false step. So, be careful, everybody." The heroes got in single file and cautiously proceeded further into the passage. The further they walked, the darker and colder the air became. It was so severe that breathing sent shivers down their spine. After a while, for what appeared to be hours, Sparrow saw a faint yellow light towards the tunnel's end. He motioned everyone to stop and wait by the walls. The young native pressed his ear against the cold stone surface and listened. On the opposite end, he heard the faint sounds of chatter and other noises. He did not listen to what was exactly being said, but he heard enough. "You two shall guard the holy relic. My scouts have reported that the soft skins have entered our domain. I believe they mean to steal our stone," said a booming voice. "We will not let them take it, Lord Ursa. Their skulls will break under our axes," said the younger voice. "Do not let them take our precious relic, or it will be your skulls underneath my axe. Am I understood?" After that, the native heard nothing else. The situation had gone from bad to worse. "What did you hear?" inquired Richard. "They know where we are. They've been spying on us since we arrived. Damn!" Everyone looked at each other with faces of shock. "So much for stealth and sneakiness. And that's not all. Ursa is here." Avalon's eyes widened with horror. That monstrosity had returned already? The newcomers were puzzled by this name. Who was Lord Ursa? Who is Lord Ursa? It seems you have a history with him. Before Avalon could answer, or even Richard could speak, Sparrow decided to let Avalon take the floor. The hunter sighed and placed a hand over his mouth. He's the leader of the Wendigos. Once a scrawny lowborn, Ursa became a ruthless savage, brutally murdering all other clans with ties to the throne, including my father and clan, the former king. He stopped himself. He's a butcher, a monster, and a definite threat. Something tells me that no one was expecting him to be here, whispered Tira. According to Sparrow, the last time anyone ever heard of the Bear King, he was waging a skirmish against the Aedos, Saurian, and the Smolus, clans further south. Richard had hoped Ursa would have died in battle, due to his unstable thirst for conquest, but it seemed the Bear King escaped death and had returned home. Knowing Ursa, he would not leave the stone unprotected, even with 2 guards standing watch. Faced with a dilemma, they debated the best way to get the stone. Half the group wanted stealth, other wanted quick snatch and grab, and for a while none of them could agree on anything. Soon Symbol began to lose her patience with her companions. This is stupid. The more time we waste on arguing, the less time the village has. Move out of the way, I'll get the stone. She pushed past her comrades and slowly crept along the walls. Slightly poking her head out, she noticed that one of the guards had turned its back to her. Unsheathing her knife, she quietly approached him. Amanus peeked his head out just a little and quickly darted up as he noticed the other guardsmen had moved to an upper level and spotted Symbol. The young Spartan knew that she was in his sights. He grabbed Sparrow's bow, notched an arrow in the prepper break for cover and fire. He realized that if he missed, the guardsman would send out the alarm. Taking deep breaths, the Spartan quickly moved from the wall's cover and fired the arrow. The thin shaft flew ever so smoothly through the damp atmosphere, and the arrow gave a sharp whistle, piercing the bone armor and flesh in the guardsman's center. The Wendigo stumbled and staggered. Amanus, pleased with the shot, smiled, but his smile deformed into a state of horror when the guardsman stumbled forward and fell over the railing. He landed on the stone floor with a loud thud, getting the attention of the other. Sensing someone behind him, he moved out of Symbol's surprise attack. Seeing the others behind the wall, the guardsman let out a howl, an animal-like screech. His alarm echoed throughout the tunnels and gorges of the Wendigo's dwelling. Everyone's face went white. Now they had no other option. It was only a matter of time until the entire army would surround him. Symbol, already scared of these devils, didn't want to experience that again. Rushing the lone Wendigo, she tackled him to the ground and struggled. She tried desperately to stab him, but his armor, consisting of bones, protected his vital organs. She kneed him in the groin in the struggle, lowering his guard and loosening his grip. She then thrust her blade into his neck. Red liquid began to ooze out from the wound in a last attempt to strangle the girl. However, she grabbed one of his arms and stabbed him in the face. Her knife went entirely through his skull, and the others moved from behind the walls and into the room. Well, this is a precarious situation. What now? Yelled Decimus. Along with Tira, Avalon, and Mori, Richard went to the altar, housed in stone. The luminous green gem was embedded in the center of a great oak. Tira, if you would be so helpful, said Richard. The shield maiden grabbed one of her clubs and cracked into the wood using the blunt end. She then grabbed the stone and placed it in her pocket. In the distance, Amanus heard a large group rushing towards them. Doesn't this place have any exits? Decimus asked. There must be a back room somewhere. Everyone looked around, trying to find out ways to get out. Just then, Mori found a small tunnel behind some dead branches. Breaking the dead wood, the samurai looked inside to ensure it was clear. Richard, I found a way out, I believe, said Mori. The rest huddled in the small entrance and realized that it was narrow. The company pushed onward because they had to move on their elbows and knees. As they trudged through the narrow tunnel, they could feel insects crawling over them. It was uncomfortable, and halfway through the tunnel, Mori realized the passage was getting smaller and narrower. Now everyone had to crawl on their stomachs and through the mud. Their shirts were getting soaked with water, and Symbol was not pleased. Just great. Getting my clothes wet again. Perfect, she grunted. Despite the hardships, they made it to the other side of the tunnel, and the group found themselves in a dark room, getting out individually. None could see their own feet and hands. The sound of dripping water was the only noise they could hear. Where are we? Whispered Tira. I can't see a thing. The only person who was not affected by darkness was Sparrow. As a former prisoner of the Wendigos, he spent most of his time in the dark. Placing his hand on the wall, he brushed over the cave's smooth surface until he found the rough texture of flint further down the cave. Getting his spark stones, he chipped away on the walls until a spark fell on the floor. A fire traced along the room, making a fire circle in moments. As the Mohawk took his hand off the walls, he heard a loud crunch. Looking down, his eyes widened with horror. Look at your feet, said Sparrow. Everyone looked down and saw massive piles of bones and skeletal remains. Surrounding them were towers of the remains of the other Wendigos. All were horrified. Many had seen carnage before, but not like this. I don't like it here. We should leave, said Symbol. Being here was giving her too much anxiety. Sparrow placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. Don't worry. We're leaving now. Oh, are you? Just when I was happy to see my old friends again, came a voice from the shadows. Suddenly, red glowing eyes began to emerge all around them. And looking around frantically, Amethyst saw that they were surrounded. Get back! Prepare for combat! Shouted the Spartan. The room was filled with barks, growls, and an unmistakable beastly chuckle. In all his glory, walking towards the company was the most feared creature in the realm. More dangerous than Kairos himself, wearing his bone armor with his bear skull helmet, brandishing his mighty war axe. The horrors of the dark forest came forth, a being Richard, Maury, and Sparrow hoped to never encounter again. Lord Ursa. And with that, viewers and listeners, we're actually going to stop here. So this will be a continuation of Chapter 19, but we will be stopping here. So be on the lookout for next week's episode, which will begin where we left off in Chapter 19 and continuing forward. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I know I have. And make sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below. And also, if you're looking for a great book this holiday season, The Gathering, Amethyst, and Michael are 50% off on Barnes & Noble in ebook form. Make sure to go to my previous interview to see the link, or rather, the code to use to get your 50% off. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and thank you so much for your time, and happy holidays.